And we're live.
Well, good evening on Mayor's Update. Let me first share with you tonight. We're doing something we've never done before. We've got a half-hour show followed by a half-hour show tonight. So we'll do an absolute block in the middle. But welcome to Doug Tarry, our first guest in our first half hour, and you'll be surprised how fast it goes. And then Natasha's joining us from Indwell to talk about the new Balaclava project with Indwell for the second half hour. So we'll have nothing but questions and answers tonight. So try and keep them based on who the guest is you're asking. So Doug's here first, so we're going to certainly do a bunch of questions based around Doug Tarry. Doug and I go back to when we were both 8, I think. It's many, many years, and certainly lighter people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, and we have kind of followed each other through town, and the Tarry family was always great at what they did in our community. And of course, we're sitting in the mayor's office, and Doug's dad was the mayor for a period of time here too. And so we're just reminiscing about that. But Doug and I go back to when they started building in Lake Margaret. I was one of the first people out there. And so we became really good. I remember sitting in your kitchen making changes to a housing plan. Right. And since then, we still grab each other for a coffee about every 2 weeks to solve all the problems of St. Thomas. And nobody takes notes, so we have to meet again 2 weeks later.
Memory like a goldfish.
Right. Well, so Doug, let's just first off, you've been, a kind of special business in this community. First dad, and then you and your brothers and sister, and what's happened in this community. What Doug Tarry Homes has done in St. Thomas would be enough to brag about for about a half-hour show. But I met you a lot when I was the member of parliament, because you were always an advocate for the Ontario home builders and the Canadian home builders and how to build net zero homes and a bunch of other great construction methods. And you were kind of the lead on that and still are. I saw 2 more, it's getting too easy. I saw 2 more awards come by this week. Well, yeah, Doug won another one, right?
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be saying that because they're very special things that you're doing as a home builder. So congratulations. And it's been a big part to have you here in St. Thomas.
Well, we're really honored that what we get to build every day is recognized as being North American leading, and we're so thankful for the customers that choose us as their builder of choice, and be able to provide the homes that we do and the quality. It's a testament to the team that we have, and we're very thankful for the great work that our guys do. Guys and girls, it's just an incredible team.
Well, I've worked with some of your team, and they're just phenomenal people. They're doing a great job out there. The homes are getting built.
And they love to brag about it. They're really quite good at telling the good story. I really love it.
Yeah. One of the real sources of pride for us, though, is our work on community engagement. And we put a ton of effort into it. We just see it's so important to be able to give back and help people to continue to grow our community. There's a lot of need out there, and we do our best to try and address it and play our role and hopefully show leadership, right?
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. We've got Elevated Park, we've got the Tiny Hope, we've got the trail system, like so many things.
And the exercise, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah. With the trail, it was like, okay, we gotta get going on it. And originally, the city hadn't even a plan, and we just said we're starting. And now, the first year of COVID, there was 1 million users of the trails. Like, that was incredible.
Because we had it, it gave people a real chance to still be associated with their families and be outside. Otherwise, there was not much else to do in most communities.
It was a great way for people to be able to bond in a really tough time.
And if you've ever been around Lake Margaret and you've walked around the trails there, like these ponds that you put in there, like stormwater management ponds, we've turned them you've naturalized the area. So they're not just a place that's kind of like an industrial wasteland. They're a place you want to go and you can enjoy. There's wildlife that travel through those zones as well.
We actually have a philosophy on it, and it's codified on what we look for development, because we're actually trying to encourage nature in what we do. And part of that is, can we look at microforesting? Can we look at what we're doing for butterfly meadows, this sort of thing, to encourage opportunities for pollinators? Putting in big areas of grass. It's not in our way of doing it. We want to make sure that nature is involved. I almost drove off the road the other day. I saw a bald eagle, and then the other night, 2 nights later, it's in my backyard, and it's just, this is incredible, right?
They've found great places to live here in St. Thomas because we've naturalized so much around good housing for people, but we can naturalize it. It's incredible to see.
And it's not what you associate with a home builder necessarily.
Well, that's why we say we don't just build for humans. We're actually looking at how everything integrates, and it's a constant learning opportunity. We're we want to be. We're going to where we want to be, and it's the journey on the path of continual improvement.
And that's a great way to tie it in with the Life Art program that you guys are putting together with your home builds.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you got there?
Well, Enercan asked me to write a book. Here's the book.
Here's the book.
Builder's Guide to Net Zero Homes. They actually commissioned me to do a guide to demystify this net zero concept. We're the leading net zero builder in Canada, and as I was writing
in St. Thomas, the leading
From
net
here,
zero builder.
we all know it, and we go, doesn't that happen everywhere?
Yeah,
No, it doesn't.
No, we've built more than a quarter of all net zero homes in Canada. We built here, so we're very honored that people are buying this and they see it as a better product. But as I was writing the book, it became apparent. Hey, listen, there's a story past net zero. And that led to what I call the 4 principles of modern design, which is, looking at carbon reduction, looking at indoor air quality, looking at occupant comfort, looking at climate resiliency. And climate resiliency is so important because there's more frequent, more severe storms. But the occupant comfort piece, and people ask me, why did you include that?
Yeah.
Well, the extreme loss of comfort is death.
Right.
And so we have to remember that in BC, almost 4 years ago now, 800 people died in their homes in 6 days. Because they had a heat dome and they overheated. And there's techniques that we use that are included in our homes that will help to prevent that from happening. But then what happens if the grid goes down? How do people survive in an extended power outage? And that led to the concept of Life Arc. What is our life support system needs, and how do we make sure that people are safe? So is it, science fiction? No, we've got 2 demonstration homes in St. Thomas. Yep. Our prototype was done in the Imagine Build Blitz build over at Oneida.
Yep. And let's talk a little bit about the hurricane proofing that you're doing as well, because you've developed a whole technique where it's like you put in a couple screws and you're done versus this whole complicated.
It's a simple piece because you had me out and showed me it's 5 or 6 screws and you can make it so the roof won't come off a house in a hurricane.
Yeah.
It's really quite unique and simple.
Yeah. So there's a new CSA standard on wind, and quite a bit of it is the research and work that we've done on applied research into the housing with Western University and Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. But can we get it down from a hurricane clip that takes a minute to a screw that's 8 seconds with the same loading so that it can actually be done? Then we looked at some other structures of the roof and how to improve it. And some of this ended up going into that new CSA standard. So we're really thrilled about that because yes, there are more storms. Now it wouldn't necessarily be a hurricane here, but we're starting to become Tornado Alley.
Yeah, why not do what we can do and be okay with it?
Yeah.
If you don't want to add tens of thousands to a home, I get that. And there isn't the amount of affordability out there that gives us that kind of room. But I mean, in talking back to your book and some of the things you've done, I'm often reminded of what you always say about your dad and camping.
Yeah.
Right? And that is?
Always leave the campsite better than you found it.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you can find a home builder, and I don't think that's thought of many places. When you find a home builder who believes in leaving their campsite better than they found it, or leaving their community. And boy, I use it as my thinking a lot too. And what can we do in St. Thomas, and what do we do to make it a more special place than it already is? And it works. Grayden, you do a whole lot of filming around our community and some really unique things we do. And it's quite good to see.
Well, it's really interesting because I was working on a video with Doug to talk about his homes, and then they were talking about the corridor of the animals. It's like, I have that on the drone because it's so beautiful. Yeah. I have deer that are in that naturalization area. Right. I've got birds that are flying low. So we were doing the video. I was like, I don't even have to go and refilm this. I already have the footage because I was out getting the shots. Yeah. It's just so cool to find out that was a conscious decision. Yeah. On behalf of yourself
and also like the naturalizing of the storm pond areas, because so often municipalities, they force you into creating this penitentiary.
It's weird,
right? And it's just like, why is there all this fencing here? Like the turtles,
right?
They don't know that they're not supposed to go here.
How do they not get that? These turtles, right?
I know, it's like they didn't get the memo. Right? Yeah. So it's really cool to see the interactivity of nature within what we're doing. Like that's I know my brother Greg, he was such a leader at this.
Was he ever?
Yeah. And just to carry on that legacy that we got from our dad. It's really
I remember meeting with Greg in my backyard. And now the house was maybe half built, but meeting with Greg, and he goes, "What do you want me to do with this wood lot?" Yeah. And I know he was kind of cringing. And we stood there and said, "We don't want you to do anything. We want it to look exactly like it looks now." And he just smiled. I said, "I'm going to put a small path through there so I can occasionally walk out and have a cigar, but I want it to look exactly like it looks." Oh, You make my heart feel so good. He was just such a naturalist,
Well,
wasn't he?
Yeah.
he was probably kind of being a little bit worried because he'd planted about 40,000 trees in that
In that
watershed.
area, yeah.
So yeah,
We loved it when the deer came every morning to
Yeah.
eat the apples off my apple tree. I don't think I
Yeah.
ever ate an apple off my apple tree because the deer would come do it right there
Yeah.
in the back
Yeah.
of Lake Margaret.
for
So,
us it's the hostas. Like you
Yeah.
just grown them as it's dessert
yeah,
for the
no,
deers.
that's
Right.
dessert. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Tiny Hope as well, because that's
Yeah,
another
such a big project of yours,
project.
Doug. And
Yeah.
and I know the city's been involved too, and of course the YWCA and Sanctuary Homes. But it takes partnerships
Yeah.
like that to make it work. And our second hour, we'll talk about a partnership with Indwell.
Mhm.
But your,
Yeah.
your partnership with Tiny Hope was something that many communities are trying to do, is to come
Yeah.
up with a real affordable model for small families or two people. And tell us where we are in the project and what the difficulties were to get there.
So we did the first grouping back in the fall because we wanted to like really push for fundraising to do the blitz, and that's why we just said to, I think we had 6 other builders join us for a 3-day blitz, which their blitzes are great fun. They're
Right.
an
Oh, yeah.
enormous amount of work, but they're so much fun. My staff said, "Can you please not do that again for a while?" But I get it.
Yeah.
But we did the 8 homes.
You didn't give them days off in lieu. That's the problem. But
So we're now pulling permits on the rest of the homes, and we're going full track on it. I think the staff was meeting earlier this week about what we've got to do for getting the parking lot area, and we're hoping to have the back half operational for rent by fall.
Yep, 2025 we'll have a number of families now living on that site.
And then, of course, still work going on for the community center, the programming house that we still got to work on as well.
Yep.
But really excited about it. It was a very difficult site, and it was, to be honest with you, Grayden, this was actually a dream I had when we were doing our work in Puerto Rico.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I think I'm looking at these small homes. I'm like, I think that there's something we could do back home with this. Yeah. And then it just boom. Oftentimes this is what happens in my head.
Could you have picked a tougher lot?
Yeah.
I mean, a brownfield, a former industry,
Elgin
tight
has
on every
such a
side.
weird shape.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And then of course, we don't want folks to be upset. Oh, this is going to take away from our neighborhood. And I think, what we've built so far, we're showing that
No,
this,
we're pretty
this is
proud
really,
of
yeah,
what's
it's pretty
been
cute,
able to be
right?
there. And the city's been
Yeah.
exceptionally proud to be able to be involved in some of this. I know that between this one and the Eastwood Housing Project that I know you also have been involved with.
Yeah.
Right. Are where we get private developers or at least charitable developers also working on helping housing in our community.
Well, Joe, we've talked about this so many times. We need a continuum of housing, and you're going to talk to Indwell afterwards and the great work that they're doing. But we need a continuum of housing.
Work it all the way up that ladder.
The whole thing, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so if we get a chance to come and play in different areas and find a way to help out, there's huge learning opportunities for us. But it's also just, it's the need, right? If we don't take care of the whole community, then it's difficult to be successful.
Well,
right.
People ask me, why are you working only on this? I said, I'm not working only on that. I am multitasking. I can do a number of things all at once, right? But someone without a home at all needs probably a little more support than someone who has a home and it's not affordable. Okay, well then we can work on the affordability piece. We can work on the seniors piece. And some of the work we've done, what we've done with the Prespa building and those things. We can continue to do all of those, but housing first.
If we figure as a baseline that housing is a basic human right that we've got to be able to deal with, then the answers become fairly simple. How do we do it? Yeah. Right. We know we have to. How do we do it?
And let's spend a little time talking about downtown, because I know that you and I have spent many of our coffees together and many other communications about the railway lands.
Yes.
And the work where both of us have agreed we've got to try and save the Railway Museum.
Yes.
We want to save the Railway Museum and the collection in it. Yep. But one of the only ways to save it is to help them rebuild the Railway Museum.
Yes.
You wrote them a really huge check.
Yeah.
In order to buy some land, the railway land, and that will help them certainly start the renovation processes. Everybody wants to know kind of what's your vision for what we're trying to work on down there, and we know it's not just Doug and Joe. There is a number of other landowners. Right?
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of work that's still ahead of us. But I guess if I'm talking about a basic vision, it would be: can we have an urban parks type setting with housing in it that's supportive to the community businesses that are already down there? We want to make sure that what we're bringing is helping to enhance what's there, including the Railway Museum, but also including the railway station, because that station right now, this land that we're working on with the city, the platform on the back end, they can't put.
We
the
can't put a
platform
train
down.
there. We can't go out on the platform.
No.
So it will be. We've got to fix both of those things, and our thoughts right in the beginning were at least talking about those, but a wider view of what your vision is.
So we need to look at, for example, healthcare, and we know we're all going to end up talking about the hospital for a long time here, but we need a healthcare center downtown. We also need one in the south end, so that's on the list. Housing, affordable housing. What can we do that is supportive infrastructure down there? There's so many different things, and part of it is, where can people go and gather and have time with their family in the downtown? Right now, it isn't happening.
It's harder.
It's difficult.
Westlake Evans Park added some more of that. Certainly the town square on Moore Street added a little bit more of that. What we're trying to do is connect all of those together. So it's a natural downtown environment.
And that's why I think the whole of the downtown is going to have to get looked at of what do we want to achieve down here, right? But we're certainly investing in it because number one, this is my hometown. Right. And I want it to be successful. But number two, we see the opportunity to really create a fantastic heartbeat for our downtown. And that's really the major driver. We did not want to see the Railway Museum, fall to the ground because of lack of funding. So we said, look, let us buy a piece of land. We'll come up with something that's going to work well and still respect what has been there for our heritage for railway. Right. And that's including, hey, listen, we're probably going to have to relocate a railway line in order to continue to have continue to have rail access. But there's all that stock in those buildings that how do we get more people in there as well? So, we've been really supportive of the ECRM and appreciative of all the great work they're doing. And we want to just see that thing flourish as much as we can. Some people may not know, but Dad was one of the founders of that, right?
Yep,
so
he was.
This
way
is
back
just,
when.
Again, comes full circle, continuing on the work that he was involved in. Right.
So next steps on that land, what we've worked together on taking some of city-owned land to make it more of a square property. You've worked with the Railway Museum. What happens next? We keep talking about a secondary plan, and maybe we should describe to the folks at home. It's a plan within the city's plan of what the city looks like. It's a secondary plan for a specific neighborhood or a specific area. So we've been talking about doing a secondary plan for the railway lands, but it also includes all the businesses along Talbot, over to First Ave, back down Wellington, and up Ross. It's that big of a square. So,
and there's adjoining landowners within that square, and we have to engage with
them. That are not you or me.
Yeah. Right. We have to be able to engage with them and try and figure out what's going to work for all of those landowners there. So a secondary plan is really the only way you can go forward with that. We are starting to look at doing visioning work now that we've done all the background research that we felt we needed to have a pretty good idea of, and this included a lot of community engagement, going and talking to different stakeholders, from businesses to the folks at the Railway Museum as well, and just anybody that's been involved. We want to try and get their feedback on it about what do we think the needs are, because we have to change the paradigm of downtown, and that means we need more people living downtown here, but we need space that they want to be in.
It's having a life here, not just living here, but having a life in downtown St. Thomas. And we recognize, but we also have to use the land most wisely that we have, certainly in the core, where people could live without a car if they wanted to. Their access to all the amenities they need are there.
Well, it's like when I was in Toronto, I had a bike. I had a garage, but I didn't need a car. So I could just bike everywhere I needed, and that was fantastic.
Well, one of the things on bikes that Joe and I have talked about extensively is, there's an opportunity to look at the rail corridor that goes out even to where the new plant is going. And how do we interconnect that? And maybe there's even some type of shuttle service that could be provided. But, if we're able to have, say, 500 units downtown and this park setting,
that'd be incredible.
Can we get it that, guys can ride their bike to work? How do we get that interconnectivity?
Well, we keep working on that into the new Yarmouth Yards, the new industrial park. It's how do we make it that safe recreational transportation piece to be able to go to work, right? Along with our transit, but other ways too.
But people want that, and they're using it for longer periods of time because the weather's getting warmer. In case you're paying attention, the weather's getting warmer, right?
I wouldn't have known that this winter or even this morning, but Grayden, have we got any
We've got
pertinent questions?
We've got a bunch of questions. I'll
Let's
just
try
wait
and
to
answer some.
get into those. I just want to give a shout out to the St. Thomas Elgin Home Builders Association because they've got their home show that's coming up. And I know you're a big part of that group as well there. So check in for that.
It's one of my favorite weekends in town.
It's going to be a couple more weekends, and Angela's going to join us next week. And we're going to figure out the exact time for that.
Right.
So yes, we've got a bunch of questions there. You can kind of look up at the screen there. You can kind of see what's come up, and then we may not have time to get to every question within our time.
Well, some of them hopefully we answered in our original conversation too.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down. If there's one you guys want to highlight here, then you just let me know. One question they're asking if why you didn't have public forums. I believe you actually did have public forums about the raillands.
We had lots of community engagement, and we we'll do more of that.
Well, we're not done. I mean, certainly part of the secondary plan is public forums. Part of the planning process that comes with the site plan has public forums. So there's a bunch more to go. I think I said this in council when we first talked about moving in this direction. I said, we're going to touch this thing about 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to have, and public is going to have all the conversations they want to have.
Yeah.
Right. But we certainly let the landowners, not just the Doug Tarry group, but all of the landowners on every side of that property also have an input into what we're doing to their property.
Yeah, and I know I was contacted separately by one of the consultants that you've engaged as the chair of the DDB to go in and have a chat about what I thought for the downtown, what my thoughts were. So I know that process is going on. Another question was about your thoughts about investing in the Elgin County Railway Museum. You've already touched on that. Are you looking towards doing that in the future? And are you concerned with the roof, for example, those kind of things on the building?
Yes.
We'll have to do more.
Preserving the heritage of the building won't matter if the building's gone because it falls down because they didn't have the opportunity to get it fixed. So all that rolling stock, where does it go if they don't have a building, right? And the building is not in great shape. It needs some work. So we're trying to be as open as we possibly can. And we said right from the outset, this fund that we're paying for that land is to help to preserve the building.
Yeah.
Now, that's not our responsibility to do that. That's the ECRM, and they're working hard on it. And I'm not going to speak for them, but we're trying to be as supportive as we can, including we help to fund research, a company called Lord, who is a museum specialist for what might particularly be a best use for the museum and how to engage, right? So I think we've been pretty upfront about what we've been trying to do with that. And we're going to continue to do that. But the next step is the secondary plan. And I think we've been saying that for a while. And there's a lot of work to setting up a secondary plan like this.
And I can speak on behalf of the city to say, our planners are a little busy. We've been really quite growing. and it is one of those things that's kind of on the side of the desk that we've got to get to if we're ever going to use that land for something other than some green grass in the middle of downtown.
Can we talk about what's going to come out on the Arcadis podcast?
Oh, yeah.
In about a week?
Yeah.
Because one of the really cool things that the city and the council have worked together along with the mayor is that they're going to take the tax revenue from Yarmouth Yards and then use it to redevelop brownfield zones within the city.
Yeah. That's what we've got to move them.
Yeah.
We've been asking the federal and the provincial government to help us with brownfields.
Yeah.
We're not getting it. So we're going to have to turn some of our own tax revenue into that work in order to make this land worthwhile for us all.
So you're taking the windfall from an existing industrial development that's going on and using it to redevelop zones that are contaminated from previous industry, but you're moving forward with it. And it's quite revolutionary, I think. And it seems simple, but nobody's doing it. Except for here.
We've got a bunch of things happening in St. Thomas that seem simple, but that aren't happening in other communities around us. We're going to talk some more about that in the next half hour.
With Indwell, absolutely.
Right? Any other questions up tonight?
Yeah, we've got a shout out. Angela DeVries from the Home Builders is saying, fortunate for all the progressive ideas in our city. Absolutely, just like we're talking about there.
Yeah.
And there's a comment. One person feels that by taking away the land, you're taking away the museum's equity and any chance they have for securing loans. Was their comment.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I understand that because we're not taking away their building. They still have a good portion of land that's there.
And they paid a fair market price for the land.
Yeah.
That wasn't ever in dispute. I might suggest Doug overpaid, but we'll just say that he paid a fair price for the land.
Yeah.
There sure wasn't a whole lot of lenders lining up to lend the money based on that land. I'll put it that way.
Well, it's very difficult to get any type of funding when you've got a brownfield.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, this project, if I had been thinking with my head instead of my heart, we probably shouldn't have gone there because
Right.
it's just an incredibly difficult.
But then how
project.
long will we have this brownfield in the middle of our community? And I mean in the heart of our community.
And
That can be more. And I count on my friend Doug to bring it forward but it is. How long would we do that?
Exactly.
Well, at
Unless
the end
you've
of
got
the day, do
vision.
we want it to stay like that and eventually the building falls down, or do we want to be proactive about it and try and do something so that ultimately people can see a great vision and say, hey, I want to have my family be able to be there.
Yeah.
Not just people that are going to live there, but people that want to come and congregate there for different events and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a whole gamut of planning that has to go through this. We're at the end of the beginning, if we're even at the end.
If we're even at the end of the beginning, we're at the middle of the beginning, but you're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do. I've learned to be patient because as a business person like you are, I like to get things done tomorrow if they can possibly be done tomorrow. It isn't always possible. And so doing it right is better than doing it quickly.
Especially when my OCD kicks in, Joe.
Yeah.
It's like, I just, can we please get going? And it's like, I got all these different steps I got to do, right? But we're committed to finding a good solution for the betterment of everybody.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Got a question in there too. Will there be any more properties that Doug Tarry will be purchasing from the railway lands, Elgin County Railway Museum over the next few years?
Well, what we're trying to do is see what the other stakeholder owners want to do with their lands and how can it be incorporated through that secondary plan process. There's 4 or 5 different landowners there that we don't have. It's not
any
our
input
land,
from
right?
them at all as to what they want to do as part of this regeneration of the downtown of St. Thomas.
And we can have the wish list of all the different things we want to see down there, like Performing Arts Center, Aqua Center, all these different things.
Right.
But you have to kind of get a plan in order to be able to go back and say, hey, can we fund this?
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what can actually fit there? What makes sense? What type of road infrastructure needs to be there? How do we maintain a railway trail? All of the above. Can we get the rolling stock, maybe some of it out being used more or shown more? Like there's so many different things to look at. And like I said, we're at the beginning of this still. Right.
Yeah. Baby steps until we get there, until we're able to run,
right?
Which is going to be exciting when we get there. I'm pretty stoked.
And if there are any questions tonight we don't get to, because again, half an hour goes very quickly, we'll try and make sure that we get an answer from Doug or you or Grayden, and I will make sure that they get answered in a subsequent show. Won't be the next one because we got a full topic on the next one too.
Totally.
This is great. It says, is it really live? It seems pre-recorded.
Well, thank you.
Right. Somebody asked me
just
what time
because
it is, and I'll tell you.
Doesn't mean
it
it's
is
not
1 minute to 7. It's live, right? Yeah.
That's a good one.
I know every week I think I get a comment or someone's like, they're not really live. And I check and they're like watching it. Like,
well, no, I'm checking my pulse.
They're like, we're not live right now. No, we just recorded it. But we do record them live. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you can watch them. And many people through this next week, thousands of people will watch this show over or see it for the first time because they don't have to be here tonight live to watch us. Although we get a group of between 500 and 1,000 that do when we do the show. But as the week progresses, Grayden, about 5,000 total would be average of views on our shows. 2 to 5, yeah. And sometimes it goes to 10. Some are better.
I feel like this one's going to get a lot of views.
Yeah,
I feel like this is going to be a very popular show this evening. Mr. Tarry, are there any questions? Are you able to read those questions? Are there any way you want to tackle? We're out of time here, so we're just going to run through the quick, fast ones. We don't want to hold them up too much. We've got
the one was about the brownfield and remediation. It's very expensive. We're trying to work on a plan on how we would do that, but you can't get to that point until you understand where the building structures are going to be. And it shouldn't be, but there are a couple of hot spots there. Most of it is cinders. So we're trying to work through what that actually looks like as we start.
What's the remediation on that spot, and what's the remediation in a hotter spot?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not our first time doing it. Now we did it at Tiny Hope. That was a brownfield as well, and for that small of a space there, it was over $300,000 to do that remediation. So
take a look at the railway lands, multiply it by that. You have an idea what it might cost to clean that brownfield.
I think that one's going to be a lot more because those rail lines are in there.
Our first budget was north of $6 million. To do it. So that's I was like, okay, well, we're going to have to think about how to do that.
Yeah, because we're talking like the late 1800s that there have been trains going through there, and all the pollution entailed with industry. So this is not, and it seeps and it goes down.
I love the good old days, but they weren't really as environmental
not quite as
we are now. Yeah.
Well, and then you're afraid of what you might find in the ground as well. But folks, when we think that this looks like a park out there, it's not. It is contaminated land. You probably should not let your kids eat that dirt.
Right.
always
Probably
said it's
not.
better to
Yeah.
eat
Please
dirt
don't
than
grow a
Tide Pods,
community
but-
garden on the railway lands. Right.
But
Yeah.
you know, our commitment is to get that cleaned up. That's what we're trying to work on, right? Yeah.
Yep. No, I was in Guelph. I've told this story before in the industrial lands of Guelph. And I called my dad because my dad's a farmer. I'm like, Dad, I want to put in a garden. He's like, where are you in Guelph? I'm like, I'm in the ward. And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, so can I get tests? Can I get tests and then grow some food? And he was like, Grayden, it would cost you tens of thousands of dollars to get all the different tests you would need to do. And then you might not even catch
Right.
all
Build
the
an
stuff.
elevated garden.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hotbed, good to go. Seal it off from whatever else is going
Yeah.
on. And it's the same situation
Yeah.
that you guys will be dealing with there.
Well, look what happened in Sarnia with Centennial Park and how
Yeah.
long that was shut down, right?
I don't even know what happened there.
Well, they had leachate coming up out of the ground. They ultimately had to end up capping it, but it was shut down for how many years?
It's got different troubles right now.
Yeah, yeah,
We're talking with Indwell on that one.
yeah. But we don't want to leave that to downtown.
Well, great. As I said, we'll have to get to some more of these.
I love
if
it,
there's
yeah.
stuff, we'll make sure we transfer them over to Doug and we get some answers. And some of them we've partially answered because of what we talked about going into the show. But we've pretty much used up all our time for the first time tonight.
I know. I'm going to give a couple shout outs because
Great.
Scott saying, Doug, you've been a tremendous supporter and visionary for the community and the ECRM on behalf of the greater community. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will Zufel, who's also part of the ECRM and Railworks, it says, on behalf of the ECRM, thank you, Doug and Joe, for everything you do. Thank you for supporting the ECRM.
Great.
So thank you. And
Great.
I think it's been amazing. I've got a whole list here.
No.
We got through half of what we were going to talk about,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
what I figured would happen.
We got to go back to a 2-hour show. No,
Yeah, no, I don't know if either of us have the time to do that anymore.
Right. No, we don't. And well, midnight to 6, I'm using just for sleep.
Yeah, I know,
So if we want
right?
to carve some of that off, we
Yeah.
could probably do it.
Oh man, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick switch over here
Yep.
to Indwell here. I'm just
We're
going to
not leaving you. Stay on.
No,
We've
yeah.
got a whole nother show tonight.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me.
Oh, Doug, thanks for
Appreciate
coming out and being part of the show. It's been 6 years in the trying.
It finally happened.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to put this on mute. We haven't gone. We're just resetting,
Okay.
and then we're going to be right back.
All right. We're back.
We're back.
We're back. We didn't get intro music to the second half of the show this time. We haven't done an hour long in a long time.
No.
Natasha is with us tonight from Indwell.
Yeah,
And we had some really great news yesterday.
we
Mhm.
did.
And it's taken a little while for us to get there to be able to announce it. So some of us have been working on it for a while. But the old Balaclava School, built in the late 1800s, heritage building that's been sitting there empty for really the last 10 or 11 years now, I guess. Adult Ed was in there before that. We're going to convert it into supportive housing with the
Yes.
help of Indwell. We're not going to do it. I'm terrible with a hammer or a screwdriver or a drill. I can't do anything. I cook, so don't count on me building anything. But 78 units
Mhm.
of supportive housing.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know the story of Indwell, I'm going to give it a really short, and then I'm going to let Natasha brag about some of the great things that this great group has done. We ran into Indwell 5 years ago now,
Mhm.
and said, "Look, we've got some homeless issues. We've got some things we have to do. We have some mental health and addiction issues that go with some of that homelessness, and we have other issues besides that. But what can you do to help?" And Indwell said, "We do that.
Mm-hmm.
We do that. We build supportive housing with cooperation from municipalities. In every case, we've contributed land or a building and found other funding provincially or federally to help make it work. And then a great group. And I'm sorry, but I keep saying to some of the principals at Indwell,
Yeah.
you're taking on too much, you're going too fast, you're doing too much. But the need is so great everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And St. Thomas has really noticed it early in our lives to make this happen. So tell us a little bit about the story of Indwell and even the story of Indwell in St. Thomas.
Sure. So organizationally, last year we celebrated 50 years. Like you said, we've been around for a while. We did start initially out of Hamilton, and it was in response to deinstitutionalization in the 70s. So when psychiatric hospitals were closing down, it was really a church family that said, "Is this not okay? People are being discharged
To the street.
to the streets."
Right.
And these are our community members.
Right.
And from there, the organization has grown. We've expanded across multiple regions. And now, as far as Mississauga to here in St. Thomas, providing hope and homes for
Yes.
individuals. Our values are rooted in dignity, love, and hope. We believe everyone is deserving of those things. And that hope is really in providing opportunity for a future that's transformative from maybe where they're entering our housing program.
And look, if somebody's entering work with Indwell right now, it's usually because they don't have a place for tonight.
That's right.
I mean, it's that critical of a piece. And I'm often asked, the mayor, you've done some work with homelessness, Joe. Honestly, you're working forward, but what about the rest? And I said, well, I'm sorry, but wouldn't someone without a home be more important than someone who has one? I mean, and I don't mean that, to be funny. I think that we need to work directly with the greatest need. And right now, homelessness without a home would be the greatest need. Supportive housing adds that to it. 78 more units of supportive housing in our community to go with the Rail City Lofts and the station on Queen Street. And now an even bigger place attached to the Balaclava School with an attachment on the back. I'm not sure we can do better than this. I mean, I'm just so proud to be the mayor of a community and a council, the leader of a council that says, let's do these things.
Yeah.
It is just, and we talk a lot about no one group can do it.
No.
It takes public-private partnerships. It takes all sorts of partnerships. And I've mentioned Indwell in the city of St. Thomas and how we've gone out and looked at the provincial government, the federal government. I know from an advocacy point of view, I've spoken with the health minister and many other ministers as to how we can do Indwell better.
Yep.
All right. And I mean but we take the Canadian Mental Health Association, we take every other association in town and the other groups that whether it's a church group that helps fund or helps supply, it takes a village to fix this community. And it's such a happy day to be talking about this. Now we're not starting this tomorrow. We've got some more conversations that got to happen. The city went out and bought the property from the school board once we found it was surplus property, and then said, what if? Could we? And we, a few conversations with Indwell, and yes, we can. All right, good. So now let's start talking about what that looks like. And in each of the other properties we've done this, we go ahead and talk to Indwell and say, if we had some land, would you be able to help? Yes, right.
Yep.
Yes is always the answer on both sides of our equation, right? And but it really works. Right?
Yeah.
We've had some huge successes here in St. Thomas with dealing with Indwell and from a housing needed point of view. And I think some of you have heard us on this show before talk about what happened when Rail City Lofts came. And it was our first adventure. It was 16 units of supportive housing, heavily supportive housing.
Yeah.
Right. And what it meant to those 16 people and what it meant to the city of St. Thomas by those 16 people getting the type of help they need. we can keep this process up. But look at the mayor. The mayor's smiling tonight,
Yeah.
folks. You know, we're going to get so close to zero
Yeah.
in this next year and 18 months as we get this last project, this project built. I think we better plan another one along the way, because why the heck not, if we can come up with how to make it work. But we're getting so close. And I know that you see this a lot. I get visits now from a lot of other communities. Another community is coming to see us this Thursday here in St. Thomas to say, how the heck did you do this? How are you making this work?
Yeah.
And you know, and certainly London comes and visits. I mean, you know, there's different things that we can do differently. So
yeah, I think you've touched on a few things. I mean,
Yeah.
a visionary council and a committed senior leadership at the city level that have been steadfast to, we want to
Housing
address
first.
housing in our community. We, you know, piggybacking off what Doug Tarry was talking about, when everyone in our community is thriving, we are all thriving. And I think the council and the leadership within the city has really been steadfast in that vision.
I give
And so
full credit to the council.
Yeah,
Look, we've pulled the oars in the same direction for 6 years.
that's right.
And it's really made a huge difference to our community.
It's paid dividends.
I cannot give the credit to anybody but that group that sits across the hall here. Is and almost never wavers.
No.
Always says yes. Look, there's 100 other things we'd love to do in our community. And as we continue to gather great jobs and great tax money coming in, we can do more. But right now, let's do the things that are most needed. And housing, of course, is that. So.
Yeah. I think too, this third part, you talked about collaboration.
Right.
We are very adamant that none of our work is done in isolation. You mentioned CMHA. We work very closely with St. Thomas Police. They too are applying innovative models to approaching, you know, the health and housing crisis
that are being stolen by many other communities.
Yes,
you can't steal something
right.
from
St.
the police.
Thomas again is visionary in their work in so many different ways. Is that system integration? How do we work together? The Central Community Health Center has been another key partner. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without you know, their valued efforts and partnership and advocacy. So much so that, you know, the collective of us from the city, the inn, the community health, or the Central Health Center, and the YWCA went to the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness to really share about the vision St. Thomas has been living out and addressing as a community to solve and address the.
So proud to share some of that. It just has been a great deal of what we've been able to accomplish in St. Thomas while we grow. And one doesn't come without the other. While we look at how our community grows, our heart also has to grow. We have to be a good community also. Grayden, let us know if there's any questions that look really pertinent up there as we go forward. I can't see questions tonight, so
we've got a question in from Heather Taylor, and it's a longer one, so bear with me here. But it says, how does Indwell, the city, determine the tenants for these projects? I worked for an organization like Indwell in Calgary, and each housing project focused on different areas. 1 homeless released from the psych hospital, 2 homeless released from the jail, 3 homeless direct from shelter, etc. Each project had a focus and in turn wraparound service for the needs. Just wondering how it's determined in St. Thomas who is housed in Indwell projects.
Yeah, that's
give it your shot, and I'll help share too. That's a fantastic question.
It is a great question, and maybe I'll give a bit of historical context to it. As an organization, we initially always had individuals just apply directly on our website. They'd fill out an expression of interest, and from there, we just sort of work chronologically. As the crises in our communities have shifted, we've recognized that there needs to be a bit more prioritization of that. And, you know, when we look at our values of dignity, love, and hope, if you're 500th on a wait list for a permanent housing unit in a building where there's maybe only 60 units, that's not dignifying. And so as we came into St. Thomas and we're launching some of, you know, this grand vision and initiatives and projects, we asked the municipality, how do you manage your wait list? And it's through the coordinated access list, by names list. So a way to identify who is chronically homeless in our community, who is most vulnerable and marginalized, and how do we assure that they are being matched to the right housing that offers the right supports. And so That's one thing we didn't necessarily touch on in depth before going into this question, but our programs do consist of interdisciplinary healthcare services that range from housing support, addiction support, nursing care. All of these roles, food security, are integrated in the work that we do in supporting individuals and wrapping around them. We talked about Railway City Lofts as one of our first projects. It's a smaller program, and so the intensities of services that are offered there are higher.
A little bit higher acuity.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when, if we have a vacancy there, we would take that into consideration.
We look for who's the best fit to go to
That's
that.
right. That's right. And as we launch Balaclava, there will be opportunity for a more what we call standardized support program. And so individuals who they maybe don't need that level of support, but they do need to be part of a community in which they belong, which is attentive to their needs, attentive to the community, and helping create that sense of belonging. And so we work, that was a long-winded answer.
Well, I'm going to add to it, because it's even longer-winded than that. We will use our by names list. We'll work through the shelter, or the end, and through the other existing Indwell buildings to see who's best suited to be in one of the supportive housing units we have.
And we call it the pathway out of homelessness.
That's
so
right.
the City of St. Thomas's housing services are just like phenomenal. And so
I call Danielle a hero every day.
Yes, she is.
And for those that don't know Danielle, I adore her.
No, she's incredible.
But it is about the right housing with the right supports at the right time for an individual. And as that is a community list, it doesn't just live with the municipality. It is a collaborative sort of effort in terms of identifying those priority groups. But it is a way to get people into the right housing so that they can maintain that sense of stability.
And we had a question come in about the supports at the new location.
Sure.
What supports will be available there? You're talking about higher acuity that will be at like the Railway City Lofts. What kind of supports will be at this new location?
Yeah, so similarly, we know that those wraparound services are invaluable to helping individuals in terms of maintaining that health and housing stability. So as I mentioned, that includes nursing support. Again, those roles are leveraged with that connection and collaboration with our community partners, whether that be at STEG, CCHC. We will have addiction support. We have housing support. We have what we call a psychosocial role, which really focuses on program and community integration, food security. So we are providing individuals with one hot meal a day. And we this was in the media release, but the Balaclava, the existing building, will have 36 units where we will provide that enhanced level of support. And then the addition is more of that standard level of support that will be offered to individuals. The benefit that we've seen in that model in terms of standardized in close proximity to enhance the programs is individuals can opt in and out of those services as they need. They're going in for surgery. They're not able to cook for a period of time for themselves individually, so they can opt into that meal service and access that. We also see a level of peer mentorship, which is really valuable when individuals have various different lived experiences.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot in terms of it's not enough to just give people a place to live. You need to have the supports to help them.
Yeah, four walls isn't always enough.
Yeah.
That's right.
These are people who are struggling to the point of being homeless. There was a causal effect, usually something that caused that. And so by giving the supports on the entry to the system helps them come through that system even quicker. So, right. Look, people do graduate, right, and move on, and to jobs and other housing through the system. So
we actually saw that when we opened the station, that individuals at Railway City Lofts were no longer needing that level of support.
So they moved over to the station.
That's right. And when we talk about that system flow, that's how we're going to end homelessness in this community.
Agreed. Yeah. And some of our homeless, anyway, we'll just keep talking about it. This is a great project, and I wanted to touch on a couple of other points. Certainly that there's a whole group working on a public-private partnership, but we're saving a heritage building too, and it kind of makes me smile in that case too. I love the looks of those old schools. They are just incredible, but to save that, putting an addition on the back that's less height than the actual old school, so that we've got some apartments in the back, some in the old school, and saving a huge heritage building in a great location in in the core, just off the main street, but within easy walk to grocery stores, easy walk to banks, easy walks to the other services that are needed and people can get to. This is we almost couldn't have asked for a better one. I mean, I know most communities are looking for, and I know some of the work Indwell has done at renovating old buildings, whether it's an old bar or an old church or other things to make housing out of them. This one might be a little easier, but it's still an old building. But we've got it's in the right place.
I totally agree. And in terms, if anyone's concerned, like Indwell has so much experience with adaptive reuse projects.
Right.
Like they've done so many different buildings, like you're saying. So it's not like you're just going to go in and tear it down and put something else up. You're going to keep the elements that are the heritage elements.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be with the organization for almost 15 years, actually. And I started
when you were 8.
That's right. I started in our Woodstock locations, and Harvey Woods Lofts is an 80 unit supportive housing program. It was an old sock factory, old textile mill, and it actually reminds me a lot in terms of the look and the size of the windows. That's right. And so, that adaptive reuse, how many times we heard individuals come through and say, I used to work here. I'm so glad to see this revitalized. And I imagine there's the same sentiment here in St. Thomas. I went to that school, or I knew someone.
And now it's sat empty for a while.
That's
now it's a beautiful, sturdy building, but it's been sitting there. And if you live near it, you might be saying, wonder what's ever going to happen with that. Well, we've got an answer for you. Yeah. And I know that in the last couple of days and in the next couple of days, we've been out reaching to some of the neighbors to say, hey, look, here's what we're doing over here. And we're going to have a public meeting and have people come and talk to us about what Indwell will be doing in that building, how it will work.
Yeah, it's so important that we are engaged neighbors. I think of a Railway City Lofts and Station program. We want to be partners in the neighborhood. And so if you have concern, come and talk to us. We want to address that, and we want to ease those concerns that you may have.
Yes.
If, in other communities, we've had individuals come by and say, this tree, do you know the history of this tree? So what are you doing here? And we want to know those things. So do reach out.
There's been a few people reach out. Apparently, all the grade 8 graduation used to sign their name in the upper floors of this Balaclava school. So
I have seen them.
Somebody has asked, what are we going to do to try and preserve? I said, right. We'll work together on preserving all the heritage we can, and making it work in our community. But housing 78 more people is a pretty important piece.
That's right.
What other questions you got, Grayden? Is there anybody else?
So we had a comment come in, but I wanted to touch base on the net reduction in homelessness in terms of St. Thomas. So you've been with Indwell for 15 years, and you've seen different communities as they work towards this. Do you have any takeaways from working within the St. Thomas community on how it was one of the few communities have achieved a net reduction in homelessness over this time period?
I think I sort of highlighted it or referenced it earlier in terms of that steadfast commitment. It was, what do we need in order to address the homelessness in this community? And through that sort of needs assessment, it was, we probably need 150 units of supportive housing.
Right.
And it was, okay, well, we're not going to be done until we've seen that vision through. And through the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen changes in politics. We've seen changes in investment, but what we haven't seen is that steadfast commitment to establishing 150 units of supportive housing.
And with the addition of Eastwood and the housing they're doing, and the sum that will be assigned to supportive, the Tiny Home project we talked about with Doug Tarry, and great that he's working on that too. And we counted in our supportive housing piece too, especially with the community building part there. I don't think we'll ever absolutely finish. That's municipalities are responsible for housing. But we've taken on that as a huge responsibility and said, that is our lane. We can drive in that lane. And it's more important that we drive in that lane than some of the other things that communities can drive in. Now, I like to say I can multitask, so I'll drive in the lane of going to find new jobs, good high-paying jobs. I'll drive in the lane of making new parks and new trails. I'll drive in a bunch of lanes, but one of them is housing. And so we're proud of being able to be there. We sometimes take a little crap for it.
A little flack here and there. And
a little flack, that's a better way to put it.
But a lot of people, their comments are that you're not doing anything. That's the main comment. It's like, you're not doing anything about people that are homeless in our community. And
are you paying attention? Are you awake in St. Thomas? Right? And we do talk about it a little.
Yeah.
What else we got up there for questions, Grayden?
We've got a question saying, one person saying, why weren't people notified before this decision? The public had no say in it. Just look what.
Well, as I just shared,
Mhm.
the decision was just made yesterday that
Yeah.
we're moving forward with this. Immediately, we're out in the public, in here, talking about it, putting out a press release, talking about as much as we can, and going door to door in the neighborhood to say, we want to talk to you and share with you what we're going to do there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We didn't come to your house before we could announce it. We just couldn't. All right. Some of this stuff has to get done.
Mhm.
Till we get to sign agreements and get the funding and those types of things. And we can't announce them till we actually have them. And sometimes when we get great big chunks of money from the government, like the 4 million we've got from the province on this one, they don't want us to announce it till we get to do an announcement. And so
Right.
we get it. We understand it.
Right.
And,
There's strings attached to that funding that you have to follow as the municipality.
well, yeah, we have to spend it by a certain time. And so we
Yeah.
have to be prepared with a project. We have to have a project ready to go. We have to have a great partner like Indwell to do it
Mhm.
with us. Because look at cities don't do this well. I can go we can go get funding. We can plan well, but there's groups out there that do the job better than we can possibly do it, which is why
Yeah.
we invest in other groups that are doing housing in a different way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you're anxious and you want to know what we're doing. I get that. Please come ask us questions. We're on here tonight. Please ask us everything you can, and then there'll be public meetings at the school as we start moving forward.
And as this partnership goes forward, one of the questions I'd come in as well is, will the city always own the building, or will you eventually transfer it over to Indwell?
No, it will become an Indwell building. We purchased it with the purpose that the school board declared it surplus, and we had a very short period of time with which to say, hey, let's take that up. We'll find a use for it. I think we had in the back of our mind a pretty good use. We knew it could be possible, but then we had to go to our partner and say, if we presented this, if we had
For
this,
sure.
do you have open space in your timeline to be able to do another big build in St. Thomas? And yes was the answer, because they always say yes like the mayor does. Right? And so we move forward with it. But it becomes an Indwell project.
You must do site visits before you say yes too, because I mean, you're putting so many apartments into this place. You've got to get plumbing in there. You've got to get flooring, all this
they're
stuff.
really good at doing this.
So you're going to visit that building before you say yes to say whether or not you can actually accomplish this.
That's right. And that ends up being a bit of a shared vision. How many units are you looking for? What can we do here? What's the program model we're anticipating? Doug Tarry was on here talking about the complexities of land. We want to know some of the answers to that before we're going to,
So you're going to do a study. So another reason why you might not as a municipality announce these things right away is because you don't want to announce it and then not have it come together.
Well, we did, but we did just announce it. I'm not sure what else you want from us. We did announce it, folks.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're going to have discussions before you make a press release on something. You want to make sure it's going to all work together.
Well, we had some closed meeting discussions with council because we have to. It's a pretty big expenditure for the city, but we have in our strategic plan those as plans. The growth of housing in our community, the spending of money on housing in our community, that housing first is a priority for this community and our council. So we already have them, and we've been pretty loud about them on this show and other places, sharing with our community that those are our priorities. So I don't know why we shock anybody when we go ahead and do what we say we're going to do. So I'm real happy with doing what we said we're going to do. And we've got great partners to do it with. So, look, thank you for helping us tonight. Anything else up there, Grayden?
Got a comment from Beth Douglas. She says, I live half block from the station, and my immediate neighborhood has significantly improved in the last 4 years. New buildings put pressure on the owners of the nearby neglected buildings to do improvements.
Isn't that great to hear? Isn't it? I mean, and we built that on a piece of land. I remember digging in the dirt there. That there was nothing there. It was a big empty parking lot. Yeah. And we said, well, we're going to build a fire hall here. And then the city said, well, if we can build a fire hall here, why don't we build some housing with it? And I'm not sure we're ever going to use that fire hall. I'm really not yet convinced that one day firemen will rush out of there on the way to somewhere else. But we can store fire trucks. So we're doing stuff. That's
Stay
right.
tuned.
That's
Stay
right.
tuned.
So isn't it neat for that neighborhood at the station is saying that?
That is,
right.
yeah. And I will share, like, across, I mentioned we're in so many different regions. We do hear that sentiment a lot.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
understand the initial concern that residents have, curiosity on, are you going to be an attentive landlord? Are you going to be responsive to the needs of the tenants who live there and our community? And the answer is yes. Yes, we are going to be attentive to those things, and we're going to add value to this community.
If I look, and I wish I could remember the young lad's name, but I remember right after opening the lofts, and it was kind of our first adventure into supportive housing, and the mayor pulled up out front one morning, and a young lad came out and was picking up even cigarette butts. He just policed the whole area, and I had to get out of the car and give him a free hamburger or two. I said, "This is great. What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I live here."
Yeah.
He said, "And I'm proud of what I was able to get from the city, and I'm not going to let anybody litter my neighborhood."
Yeah.
And there's that kind of attitude. It's a housing attitude that isn't prevalent until you have a home, right? So thinks that's one of the best. I just have seen it happen in front of my eyes, and as we move from sheltering to supportive housing to affordable housing, we really see that appreciativeness of housing.
Yeah.
Right? So,
What I'm really excited about is to see the pathway come together. And like we've talked about this a lot, Mayor, about how eventually the shelter that we have will truly become an emergency shelter once this project is built.
great.
Because
We won't need emergency shelter of 35 or 40 people because we're actually housing.
and you plan for overcapacity. So you're not just planning for like what we need now, you're planning for what we need in the future.
Right.
Which means you'll be able to accommodate that. It's not like you'll get this, like there are a lot of municipalities or like the province will work and they'll work on what's needed now. They'll build that, but it doesn't get built for another year or two, at which point they're already behind. And if you look at the school system, you can see that kind of an area. You've got a portable and a portable and a portable and a portable.
We've got to build ahead.
Yeah.
We can't wait for it to be a need.
And that's what's
right.
really exciting.
This council's been great about saying, let's get ahead of our problem because it is eliminating. You'll be the first to admit it's eliminating other problems. You mentioned sheltering.
Yeah.
Right. Not a great place to live.
No.
But if the option is that or in the cold, okay, now you stepped up. But now step up into supportive housing. It just makes our community a better place. Look, we're looking to employ a pile of people, thousands of people over the next 3 or 4 years. I'm praying that some of the people that will move into Balaclava, some of the people that are currently straightening their lives in a great way at the station or at the lofts, become those employees. I mean, that's truly why we do this. It isn't just so we, oh, here's a house, right? No, it's, what do you want to do next? Is there a school thing we
have
can
the
do?
experience.
Is there a housing piece we can do outside of this? Is there an employment piece that you never thought you'd ever get to do? What can we do? Right?
And you talked about those pathways, and we Tiny Hope we mentioned. You mentioned Eastwood Housing, and I think, and we talked about collaboration, and it is the pathway and intersection of all those partners of the right housing with the right supports at the right time, so people maintain that stability. And we have people asking, well, how long before that project? Because I'm already ready to move.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, there'll be a list tomorrow.
That's right.
And I'm very sorry. It takes us a little while to renovate and build. I'm guessing 12 to 18 months for this project.
The sizes, that was another question, because people are interested, like, okay, what size will be available in the different rooms there?
Like the size of the units?
Of the units,
Typically, Indwell develops units at around a 350 square foot, which some people are like, that's not that large. No. But come and tour. Our doors are always open. And we'll show you how that 350 square feet is just perfect for individuals who are, singles living in a one bedroom or bachelor unit.
It would be called a studio apartment most places, but they're lovely. And
I've been in the ones in the station, or is it the
station when we did the opening?
Yeah. Very well done. All right, we're over our time here
again.
Yeah,
see how fast this goes.
It does fly by.
But we did want to mention, in terms of shelters, there's also the animal shelter that is getting.
Oh yes, please. Can I share that?
Yes.
We've been working for years to build a new animal shelter in this community, and it's been a struggle. Wednesday, we do our groundbreaking. There is already some work going on the site, but we're going to go out there and do an official groundbreaking at 2:00 on tomorrow afternoon. And I think I might bring my puppies. because
Nice.
that will be fun too.
You're ready to get rid of them?
No, well, no, I want to be able to threaten them. This is where you're going. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that to Ruben or Soleil. But I wanted to show them where the new park's going to be. So Mom doesn't have to drive them all the way across town to the other park either. There's going to be a park right there. So 2:00 tomorrow afternoon at the groundbreaking for the animal shelter. And Natasha, thank you for joining us today.
Thank
There's
you
100
so much.
stories more that we could tell. Thank you for what Indwell does. Please pass on to your team, your coworkers, your superior. We couldn't do it without you. St. Thomas couldn't be the place that it is without Indwell. We thank you so much for your help. We'll continue to call on your help, right? And we'll continue to support you in any way we possibly can. I know there's some other communities out there would like to hear more about what St. Thomas did. So I'm sharing all I can.
That's great. Thanks so much for having us today, and to all our partners who are
Well,
making
anytime
these
you
things
think there's a
possible.
message, you call Grayden or I. We'll have you on.
Perfect.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? You know,
And
these
there
are
were-
easy questions to answer. These I know.
Yeah, there were additional shout outs, positive comments. We didn't have time to get to them all on there as well. Saying
Right.
thank you. Thank you for
Right.
everything you do.
So we'll look through the other questions, see if there's anything we really should answer for next week. And by the way, next week we're trying a new experiment.
Yeah.
The mayor's going to be in Germany.
Live from Germany.
Right.
The fatherland.
Well, Grayden's going to be here.
Deutschland.
And there's a 6-hour time difference. And we're trying to make sure Tuesday night at 6:30, we come on air with Mayor's Update. And so that'll be about 11:30 or 12:30 midnight their time. So happy to do it. I may look tired.
And we might go a little early. We might switch the time depending on schedules.
If we have to go early, we have to go early.
Yeah. So we'll pay attention.
You guys will go. Yeah.
We'll let you know. We'll let you know. But it's going to be a great show. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
We might have some special guests. Who knows?
Who knows? Who else we have?
Yeah.
Well, we are trying to get Angela to talk about the home show.
Yes. Angela's going to be on for the home show.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. See you next week.
All right. Take care, guys. I'll see you next Tuesday.